Join me in welcoming Audri Scott Williams.
It's so wonderful to be here, and I'm very grateful whenever we have an opportunity to show up and to be a part of a sacred circle, a sacred gathering. As you can tell, peace is very important to me. It's what I live for. And people often say, why do you walk for peace? There's never been peace. There's never going to be peace. You know, that's what we do, divide and all these things. And, you know, I say that is one story. That is one story, but that hasn't been my story. We've walked around the world. We've walked across the country. All the things that we do, we have never been financed, which meant we had to be totally dependent, faith-filled, unstoppable, unshakable, and unrelenting in our knowing that the human spirit is so much larger than the stories that we hear. We have slept in homes that were Christian and homes that were Muslim. We've been in Hindu temples, we've been in indigenous communities, we've lit sacred fires, we've done sacred water ceremonies, we've been deep in the belly of Mother Earth and as high as the Himalayas. And in all of that, we have been loved, we have been cared for, we have been protected. Even when we arrived in the middle of the bombings in Mumbai, the trail angels, we always call them trail angels, those people that just show up and say, don't worry, we've got you. You know, so no matter what the situation or the circumstance, we have found love. And I really honestly believe and know in my heart that if we begin to tell that story long enough, loud enough, to as many people as we can, as many places as we can go to tell the story, what we will do is help people to remember. Because we are all there. Every day we wake up, we stand in a field of common values. Love, peace, joy, compassion, right action. We all believe in the possibility of humanity to evolve to its highest place, or we would not be sitting here right now. So when I say a circle of one, what I'm really speaking to is that. For us, peace means passionately engaged, affecting community everywhere. Passionately engaged, affecting community everywhere. And we don't say what community. You know, one of the inspirations for the 13 Moon Walk for Peace was our return from the World Walk. After walking across 6 continents, a little exhausted, I would say, a little out of our minds by the time we get to New York. But you know, out of your mind is a great place to be. I remember when I started on the path, you know, I was one of those fast track to success young African American women out to change the world, headed towards presidency of a college. By the time I was 35, that was my goal. So at 35, as a dean of continuing education, I hit my brick wall, raising 3 sons, finishing my doctorate, and being a dean. I finally woke up one morning, saw a spot on the floor, picked up a cloth, decided I'd clean it, bent down to clean it, and had a heart attack. Got kicked right in the heart. What a great way to open. You know, what a great way to open. And so at 35, I had a very important decision to make. Am I here to live my purpose, or am I going to die trying to live something else? That was a very real, I don't say that lightly, and I think I'm losing my microphone, but I'll try to keep it there. I don't take that lightly. Maybe we can switch mics. I didn't take that lightly, because literally for me, either I was going to live my purpose or I wasn't going to be here, and the doctor made that very clear. But what I wanted to say is, in the transition to not only discovering what is my purpose, I had to take a big leap of faith. Because in order to be in my purpose, I had to change. I had to change. In me, I had to change. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I didn't know. But one day, going to work shortly after that experience, I had this sense, this voice rose up in me. And when I say rose up in me, I mean rose up in me. You can't make this stuff up. This voice rose up in me and said, let go and go in faith, and all will be well. And so I'm riding to work with the knowing that I'm going to resign that day. Now, I hadn't said anything to my husband. I hadn't said anything to anybody, because I just heard the voice. How do you describe that? But I did. At the end of the day, I left my letter of resignation. And I said, Lord, I don't know how, but I will follow my dreams until I get it right. And that's literally what I did. I began a course of following my dreams from that point on. If it doesn't come in a dream, I don't do it. But if it comes in a dream, I am committed to the vision, to the dream, to the walk. And that's how it began. But I'll tell you one secret. When I was starting to talk about losing your mind being a good thing, on the path along the way, you know how people show up to help you know you're there. I was saying to an elder, I've had many beautiful stories escorting elders around the world, but nevertheless, I was saying to an elder, you know, I don't know if I can do this. I said, because I feel like I'm going crazy. You know, and he looks at me quite indignant, and he says, my dear, it takes a mad, mad woman to do this work. And so I felt like I had qualified for it. Let's talk about that moment in each of us, because each of us has a passion. I don't care if we're just coming into the world or think we're about to head out. Each of us has something inside of us, a fire, I call that divine spark, that calls us to action. It calls us to being. And then we have a choice to either align with it or to run from it as fast as we can. And what we find is when we align with it, that we find ourselves in that space of love, in that space of oneness. When we run from it, we begin a process of separation that will chase us the rest of our lives. Because in that place of separation is fear. It is the fear that keeps us from stepping into the power and presence of who we truly are. And yet it's only in that space that we literally have the opportunity to shift the sands of time, to change the world. In that space that we each hold, that if we connect with. And it doesn't always have to be that you're going to take off and walk around the world. It might be something simple in your family or in your community that you're here to shift and to change. And as we are now poised, I think, on one of the greatest moments in the history of our evolution, it is so important that we listen and we act. Traveling around the world and coming back home, I realized that there is something that as Americans, we have an opportunity to bring to the rest of the world. If we can step outside of our fear that makes us think we've got it all. I think that was in your prayer. Sometimes we think we have it all. It was in the song that we've created this sense of self that is so righteous that the rest of the world has to come up to our standards. But what we found in traveling around the world, that we've been in homes where people had so little, so little, And they would put out a spread for us, and the whole community would come out. I mean, little villages in India, in Africa, in the outback in Australia. And people would say, well, when you travel, make sure you don't eat the food. No. We were humbled and honored to eat the food. Because it was love that made that happen. It was the love of community and a deeper understanding of who we are as a human family. Those lessons came in those very poor communities, not poor in spirit, rich in spirit. And then when we came back to America, sometimes we came into communities that had a lot, but yet would not give anything. So as Americans, we have an opportunity to remember who we are and embrace our greatness and understand that our privilege that we have is a sacred opportunity to teach and to share with the world. And that has to happen with our day-to-day lives. We have communities, and that's why we're doing this walk. When we got back, finding pockets of communities that we might have expected to see, you know, in the outback or in some third world country, if you believe in that. I don't usually like to use that terminology. We have pockets right here in this country, in our urban areas. I can't tell you how many of our peace poles have been planted in honor of young children who have been killed while we watch in silence. I can't tell you the number of times on the Pine Ridge reservations we saw pain and agony and poverty in a way that we're like, is this really America? It feels like genocide. We glorify the Native Americans in so many things, and yet here in Pine Ridge, it's expected that every winter so many people are going to freeze to death in their homes. It's expected that by a certain age you're just going to be an alcoholic and drug addict and live on the corner there right outside of the reservation. It's kind of expected that you're going to lose that sense of yourself in a world that doesn't provide an opportunity. But you don't have to go to Pine Ridge. There's cities and communities right here on the East Coast. And so I'm saying all this not to bring you down, but to help us to understand that the beauty that we are is the answer. It's not the politic. It's not the corporation. It is us. It is us in our own healing. It is us in the extension of our healing to our communities. And it all comes down to love. Love to live. Live to love. Say that with me. Love to live. Live to love. One more time. Love to live. Live to love. That's simple, isn't it? It's simple. But when we love, we enter into that circle of oneness where there is nothing that exists outside of ourselves. There is no other. There is no them and us. We understand our mutuality and the fact that our destiny is caught up in that mutuality, as Martin Luther King Jr. used to say. We remember, as Gandhi said, that we are the change that we're seeking in the world. If we're not about the change, we're not going to have it. We make it together. We are the circle of one. In our culture and in so many cultures around the world, we think about all the differences. Whether it's race, whether it's female, male, whether it's rich or poor. whether it's gay or straight, whatever, whether you worship this way or I worship that way. And we define ourselves in that. And then we draw the boundaries around that to make sure it's ingrained. And then we have conflict. Then we become the judge of what's right, what's wrong, and who's right in their prayers and who's wrong. But we don't have time for that anymore. We don't have time for that anymore. Because right here, right now, we love to live and we live to love. Recognizing that love has the power to change all things. And I might not understand you, and you might not understand me, but if I love you and you love me, we're going to take the time to figure it out. And the world needs that. Such simple things. You know, when we walked around the world, we just started collecting these simple truths. Simple truths. I don't care what community we were in. If a child was scared, it cried. And it reached up to its mommy or its daddy. I don't care where we were. If a parent had a promising young child there, and all children are, they wanted the best for that child. Simple truths. And so today, I want us to just sit and think of the simple truths in our lives, because it is in the values that there is no difference. In the values is where the oneness exists, because that transcends all other things, all other separations. So a circle of one, that's what we are, a circle of one. Every time I look at you, I see me. Every time I look at you, I see you, but I see me in you. Every time I look at you, I see you, but I see me, and I see God in all of us. Because we are that one expression. Peace, it's not very complex. Separation only comes when the fear rises up and we choose to align with the fear. Whether it's an internal fear or something else that's placed upon us. We forget how powerful we are in the presence of God. And we're always in the presence of God. We are the presence of God. And so as the 13 Moon Walk for Peace, we're so blessed. And we thank you so much, Nancy, for embracing us here. You have no idea when you're walking, and we spend so many times in parking lots and sometimes on the side of a road. It's just such a gift to come into an area where you can park and you can open up the door and actually walk out and be safe and have electricity. So we thank you. But the call to be here, there was definitely a call, a destined call, if you will. And so we're very grateful to have this opportunity. And what we want to leave with you is that simple truth, that love is the answer. But we have to embody the love. And we have to speak truth from that space of love. I want to say that again. We have to speak truth from that space of love. And in speaking truth, we will find the answers for what we need to heal ourselves and our humanity. Just keep remembering who you are. I traveled with these elders, I was saying, and I'll end with a couple of stories from them. One of them was an elder who's now ancestor. In fact, many of them are now gone. But Mr. Haile Makua from Hawaii. And Mr. Makua used to say to me all the time, it's all about choice. I'd say, yeah, but you know, there's all this stuff. And he said, no, it's just about choice. I say, but Mr. McCoy, you know, this happened in somebody's life, and this happened in somebody's life, or this happened in my life, and that's what, he says, it's all a matter of choice. Choose. It's all a matter of choice. Do you want to be here, where separation is, or do you want to be here, where love is? Choose. And then there was Auntie Poi Poi, also from Hawaii. I remember we were traveling, I think she was this actually happened in Bali. and Auntie was talking about forgiveness as one of the foundational pieces that we have to work with. And Auntie's also now ancestors, so I salute them both. Auntie said, you know, forgiveness isn't for, her father actually was, grandfather was a healer, kahuna in the Hawaiian tradition, and a man who had been really belittling him in the community came to him because he all of a sudden became very ill and asked her grandfather to heal him. And so her grandfather said no. And then he had to leave and go to the beach where he sat for days. And then he asked for forgiveness and he cried. And she said, I could never understand why he was crying when he wasn't the one who was bothering the man. The man was the one who was really putting him down. And his lesson to her was, remember, forgiveness is not for him. The forgiveness is for me. Because I ill thought of the man and I know better. I know too much to do that. So he had to pray for the healing for him in order to be able to pray for the healing for me. So I say all of that to say we must forgive ourselves. And any time that we're looking out in blame or judgment of others, just take gentle steps backwards to find the core of that healing from within. And the last story I want to talk about is being with Baba Credo Mutwa. He taught me a really important lesson, and I'd like to share. He said that at one time there was a man in the village who had murdered a couple of people. And so the villagers came to the healers and said, what must we do? And the healers, who are traditional healers, did a divination to find out what they must do. And it was decided that the man who had murdered people would be brought to the village center where a woman was giving birth to a child. And they sat him beside the woman as she went through her process of birthing. And the man tried to run, but they held him down. He was blindfolded as well. And then when the baby came out, they placed the baby in the man's hands. And he began to cry and carry on. But he said the man never would hurt life at all after that experience. And the reason I wanted to share that is because he understood something that's so important. When someone acts out in our society, it is an indication of the illness in society. So when we look at and want to blame the young people in the gangs or whatever we want to blame, we have to take a break and say, wait a minute, what's happening in our community that we are creating that? And that's where the healing has to happen. And to bring those groups back into circle so that we can be about restorative justice. So I wanted to just end with those three stories because these elders taught so much. And Baba Credo is still alive, thank goodness, in South Africa. But the teachings are simple truths once again. It's not complex. The circle is only one. It's only us. It's only us. Think about someone that you really don't like. And we know that's not so. But I mean, just think about someone that really gets your goat. Just hold that vision for a moment. And then look at that person in your mind's eye and send them love. Just send them love. And hold that love within you. Because by sending them the love, you have already begun to heal the space in you that couldn't see the God in them. Let us live to love. And let us love to live. Let us passionately be engaged, affecting community everywhere. Because there is nothing outside of us. It's all in here. Let us remember who we are and walk in the power and presence of the greatest love of all. Thank you.